What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, what a day it was. We obviously have George Pickens and some updates there to talk about, but there is a name that we will start this show with here in just a minute. I am not alone here. It has been the biggest name in all Steelers talk, possibly history, for how much, yet how little we have been able to talk about this guy. Well, he might be coming back. Plus, it's Wednesday, excuse me. We're diving into our week 15 power rankings. And as we do every day, we'll answer all your questions. So make sure you're tossing them in the chat throughout the show. Nick, it's gloomy. They practiced in the snow today, which I think last week I took full advantage of them practicing inside away from the elements. We didn't get that today, and I'm a little butthurt about it. How you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, feeling better than you because I've been in this cozy apartment all day. So I'm feeling pretty good. And it's interesting what the football gods do. They take one player away and they say, hey, you remember this guy? He's actually getting healthy. And it's like, no, I didn't remember that guy, but great. Good to know. And obviously we'll talk about that. But Hard Knocks was good yesterday. So obviously feeling pretty good. Hoping the weather gets a little bit nicer. But, it's December. So not much you can actually ask for.
I agree. I had Nick Fairbot today, who's younger than me. Younger than you too. Talked to me today. He's like, before I was born, was it like this? Did it just snow after December? I was like, no, before you were born, things were normal, Nick. It just snowed when it was supposed to snow. We did not question these things. Now it's like every time it snows, I'm like, dude, it was 60 degrees yesterday. Can we please stop this? This is terrible. So I'm glad that you had a good day. I have not watched Hard Knocks episode 2 yet. Haven't gotten a chance to. Last night was a little hectic. And then 9 p.m., we all know I'm a grandpa. And unless there is football on, I'm snoozing early. So I'll catch that after this. I am very excited for it. I have heard I have not made a cameo yet, which is a little disappointing, but we'll get there. That's my goal for the end of the season. Get on Hard Knocks for at least just a second. We'll start the show with news. That had me cracking up this afternoon, looking right at Nick Fairbot. So me and him sit next to each other in the press room at the practice facility. And I went, what the hell? I was like, is this real? He said, yeah, it is. Could not believe it. According to the one, the only Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's and Pittsburgh Steelers insider, Jerry Dulac, during his weekly chat with Steelers fans today, dropped this quote, and speaking of healthy returns, I was asked last week about the health of inside linebacker Cole Holcomb and how he's coming along, and I said I didn't know, but I would check. Well, I can at least tell you his recovery has been outstanding. And to me, from what I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if they add him back to the roster soon. At this stage of the season, imagine what fresh legs can do for the depth on the inside. Nick, we might have made it. We might have made it to the other side of the Cole Holcomb train or tunnel or whatever you want to call it, that we didn't think we were going to make it to the other side of. It was getting skeptical. People were talking he's never going to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers again. We were asked 700 billion times on this show. Shout out to Joey the Great. Did I get that name right? Eddie the Great, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't mean to do that to you, Eddie. Eddie the Great for tossing out just fantastic Cole Holcomb comment after fantastic Cole Holcomb comment. Well, we're here, guys. We're here. All those thoughts, all those questions, all those, we don't really have an update. I doubt he's going to play this season. We're here. Do I expect Cole Holcomb to play soon? I don't know, because I didn't expect him to play at all. So I can't sit here and say, well, it would make sense during Baltimore. It would make sense during Kansas City. It would make sense during Cincinnati. It would make sense during the playoffs. It would make sense during all of those. It doesn't matter when. It's a matter of, is he healthy? How healthy can he be? I'll ask you 2 questions here because I got thoughts. I got a little rant I plan to go on here. How stunned were you? Because that's the first one here. And did you think we would ever get here, my friend? Did you think this was ever going to happen this season?
Well, here's a little pull behind the curtain of my Wednesdays. I do all Steelers talk stuff in the morning, and then I transition to tip of the iceberg stuff in the early afternoon, which is when a lot of this stuff happened. And then you send me the message of what we're going to talk about so I can prep. You said Cole Holcomb coming back, and I said, "Ooh," I said, because we had the question. I think it was yesterday or maybe last week, where it was Roman Wilson, Troy Fautanu, Cole Holcomb. Which of them, if any, are coming back? And you said, I don't think any of them are. And I thought of the 3, Cole Holcomb was the least likely simply because we hadn't heard anything. And yet here we are. He's out there. He's working. He's not quite practicing yet. But the fact is that when Jerry Dulac says something, it means something. And the fact is that Jerry Dulac believes that he would come back. And I can't believe it. I'm entirely surprised that is what popped up today, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
I think it's crazy. I'm excited for Cole. I'm excited for the Steelers, obviously. I'm excited for everybody who's been waiting around for this news. So let's dive into when it could possibly happen. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to play the Eagles this weekend. It's Wednesday. Cole's not going to play on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. Chances are when he does come back, if he does come back, it is going to be a ramp-up period, much like everybody else. They'll activate him to the 53-man roster, or I believe he could return to practice. I think he gets the same 21-day window that anybody on injured reserve gets. So they will allow him to practice, kind of get his feet wet, get situated, see how he feels in a football environment. I would imagine it's 2 weeks before he's back on the field after this one, once he gets to a practice, because that's the biggest thing here. He has not practiced. Not one time has he practiced with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you'd have to get to a practice setting. I would imagine 2 weeks after that practice setting is when you activate him to the 53-man roster, and then you just let him loose from there. I got no qualms holding anybody back saying Cole Holcomb should not be on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense the day that he returns to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Like, Cole Holcomb was the guy last year. He was the starter. He was the long-term plan here. You keep him the long-term plan. I look at Cole Holcomb as a guy that steps in next to a Landon Roberts and Patrick Queen. He is probably not going to be a starter. Landon Roberts is the guy there, obviously. But he steps in. He's part of that 4 rotation with a Landon, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, now Cole Holcomb. Maybe takes... I would be shocked if he takes a special teams role, but maybe he takes a special teams role just to kind of develop into that. But I think it's more of a depth piece to say, hey, this is another key name that we are adding to this defense for a playoff run to keep these guys healthy, just in case. I'm not going to say it can't happen. I'm stunned that we're talking about it possibly happening. But if Jerry Dulac says it, you listen. That's what I've learned in this business. That's what I've learned over the years. I still remember the first day I walked into UPMC Rooney Sports Complex for Mike Tomlin Tuesday, and Jerry Dulac was standing right there, and we talked walking up the steps. And the second he walked away, I said, that guy knows everything in this building, and I don't even know who that is yet. And I was right. So I would say there's a chance. In your head, okay, What is the game? Where is the timeline for this to possibly, and we're just guessing, but for this to possibly happen?
Week 18, Cincinnati Bengals, Pittsburgh Steelers. If I think this is happening, I think it's going to happen before the playoffs, because they're not going to want him to come back and the first tackle he has and the first action he has is in a playoff scenario. But I also don't know, again, where the timeline is here, because this is a guy that hasn't practiced all season. You can say that. This is a guy that hasn't had a practice snap since week 9 of last season. So I think it's going to be a ramp up, like you said. But I think that if they're going to have him come back, they're going to want him to get regular season reps before he gets to the postseason. So I think it would be week 18 is where, if it happens, I would be circling on my calendar.
Yeah, I could see week 18. I think this 11-day stretch makes things difficult. It's much like George Pickens, and we'll talk about him in a minute here. I think it's difficult to say, hey, you're gonna step on the field and you're gonna play 3 games in 11 days. Nah, you're gonna play 2 games in 5 days. Nah, probably not. That's probably not gonna happen. I agree with you. I think week 18, you're resting a lot of guys at that point. If you claim the playoff spot, if you win the AFC North, if the playoffs are decided at that point, you're resting some people. I could see Cole just taking some extra snaps, getting his feet wet. There's not really some added pressure for him to go out there and have his hiccups, because I think Cole Holcomb was the guy in that inside linebacker room, but I also think he hasn't played football in a year, and that's really difficult to come back to or from. So I would say I agree with you. I think week 18 is where we stay. I mean, you hear from Jerry, and we'll finish it off with this question. You got to believe Jerry, but what are your in your head? What's the likelihood this happens this season?
Oof. I would still put that at around 50-50 chance it happens, because if Jerry's saying it, it means that it's on the table. It doesn't mean that he's going to respond the correct way to be able to get on the field, because coming back from this injury is not a linear path. Coming back from any injury is not typically a linear path. So I would still put it at 50-50, especially because of kind of the condensed timetable that we have. And even if he is healthy and even if he's ready to go, how many snaps is he going to be able to get? Because, I mean, you mentioned it. Yeah, he was the future whenever he was brought in last year. To some extent, they might still want him to be that. But right now, I view him as the same thing as Preston Smith. Is it nice to have him? 100%. But if the 3 other guys are healthy, do you really need him? No, not really. I mean, nice to have a number 4 of that caliber, but I think the 3 guys in front of him kind of eliminate the necessity of making sure that he is ready.
I agree with that. I agree with the notion. I would say if Jerry says it, it might be 60-40.
Okay.
Because I could see I mean, just because Jerry says it. If it was yesterday, if you asked me 24 hours ago, it's 0% chance. So this is a significant jump.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like Preston Smith. And while that's a great point, Mike Tomlin's thinking, oh, if we could get Cole back for the playoffs, that's just another name to the puzzle here that you don't know if you could use. You don't know what's going to happen come the postseason. You don't know if you find yourself with Mark Robb having to start at inside linebacker. If Mike Tomlin has that opportunity, he's going to take that opportunity. I also know Cole has been impressing these coaches with his recovery process, and I think that stands out. So we'll see what happens. Massive news. I mean, a name everybody's been waiting for. Eddie the Great, man. I hope you're out there listening somewhere. And if you're not, you'll tune in soon. I know you will. Let's talk George Pickens real fast. Did not practice today. Hamstring injury, obviously. Does not feel like he's going to play against Philadelphia. I mean, he said that. Mike Tomlin said that yesterday. He's doubtful. Where we stand today, I think this was the icing on the cake. It's over. They're not gonna rush this back. I'm getting more and more of a sense that George Pickens could be gone until the postseason. That this could be a Pittsburgh Steelers play this safe because there's no real reason not to play it safe. And I agree with the notion, because if you have George Pickens, you don't want to not have George Pickens. That is the biggest loss you could take before the postseason. And that includes a name like TJ Watt. And I understand what I'm saying there, but you could replace TJ Watt with Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig. I'm not saying it's an exact replica. I'm saying those are good replacements. You're replacing George Pickens with Mike Williams and Calvin Austin, and it's just not the same quality or caliber of guys. I look at this as a keep it really, really simple and really, really safe. And I'm starting to get the feeling and just connect the dots here that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to play it that way. I think George could be gone until January, to the point where they say, and it could change, but if they beat Philadelphia, they claim a playoff spot. Okay, great. There's no need for George. Why would you play George against Baltimore? If you beat Baltimore, even if you lose to Philly, you're not going to play him against Baltimore. It's a short week. If you beat Baltimore, you claim a playoff spot and you just won the AFC North. No need for George Pickens at that point. You're not going to rush him back 3 days after that if he just missed 2 games. I mean, he'd have to be so close for that to be a thing. I could see the earliest him coming back is Cincinnati if the Pittsburgh Steelers still do not have a playoff spot locked up for this one. In the meantime, it's a lot of Mike Williams, who I think Mike Williams will be fine. I'll tell you this. My biggest worry with Mike Williams, and it was brought up today during his press conference, he didn't get a bye. And I know that people will say that and be like, oh, whatever. This is the second time this season that he will go on a stretch of games where it is multiple short weeks in a row, and he has not had a bye week. I think at some point you're looking at it saying Mike Williams might be a little exhausted by the end of the season. That's my only worry when it comes to Mike Williams. What makes me excited about Mike Williams is that I think a full week of practice, knowing that he is Russell Wilson's moonball guy, is going to do wonders. And that's all you need to be. That's what, you know, when I texted you, when I said, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today, it was, what does Mike Williams need to do in George Pickens' absence? That's what he needs to do. He needs to be Russell Wilson's moonball guy. He needs to add that element to the offense, because if he doesn't, then they have completely eliminated the biggest part of their passing game and no longer could open up everything else. I think defenses, especially smart defenses, will start to catch on to where the weaknesses are and what the Steelers offense is going to do. They will become predictable. He needs to be the moonball guy. I'm confident he could become the moonball guy. I don't think George plays until the postseason. That's just my guess. And kind of an educated guess where we stand right here. Do you feel differently?
The George thing, I'm going to defer to you on, but as far as Mike Williams, I'm not as, worried about that. I understand that, the bye week is very important for a lot of these guys, but I think the way the Steelers slow rolled him when he got to Pittsburgh helps that out about a little bit. It doesn't make up for the fact that he didn't have one, but it doesn't make it as bad as if he came in and was immediately given the workload and the responsibility of a number 2 wide receiver. In fact, in a lot of these games, he didn't get a target. He got very small amount of the snap share. I think it helps a little bit. It's not going to cure all, but I think it helps a little bit. As far as what he needs to do, I agree that he needs to be the quote unquote moonball guy, but I think you just need to see a little bit more of what he did last week. Nobody is going to step in and be George Pickens 2.0. Nobody's going to step in and take over everything that George did for the Pittsburgh Steelers. One player on this roster is not capable of doing that. But what he just needs to do is exactly what you said. Stretch the field, try to open some things up for other players like Pat Freiermuth, like Van Jefferson, like we saw last week with the 2 touchdown passes, and win more of the 50-50 balls than you lose. If you can just do that, you're not going to catch every one of them. You're not. George Pickens doesn't catch every one of them, although he catches probably 85%.
He gets very close.
If you can give me 55%, Mike Williams, that's what you need to do. Just win more than you lose against the Eagles, and if it gets to it, against the Ravens, against the Chiefs, and against the Bengals.
I'll say this. When it comes to Philadelphia, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's both working on their side and certainly working against them. It is going to be rainy, cold, and nasty at Lincoln Financial Field. And that means this is a Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren game, but it also means it's a Saquon Barkley game and who could come out on top. But I think that's where the moonballs come in, because running those shorter routes is a lot more difficult in the rain. Hitting those shorter passes is honestly more difficult in the rain, because you got to put more velocity on it. You got to time it better, the whole 9. Sit back there and launch one up. Russell Wilson's hands are the size of this computer screen. So he'll be just fine in that aspect. I agree with you. I think that the expectation has to be lower than George. Obviously, nobody's George Pickens, which is why you rest him. But at the same time, I mean, Mike, this is an opportunity for him to say, hey, I'm here. And at the same time, the Steelers need him to say, hey, I'm here in this one. All right. Let's dive into it's Wednesday. Power Rankings Day. I got a fresh 5 almost. Real excited. Didn't forget somebody this time, which is the best part of this whole thing. I wrote these down during the game, before the game even ended. It was the 4th quarter. I think Kadarius Toney just fumbled the ball or something like that. And I sat there and I said, all right, let's come up with these 5. And no, Ben Skoranek is not on it, but he might be damn close. Let's dive into Week 15 Power Rankings.
I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it.
We're starting it off here. Number 5, my friend. He's back on the list for the first time in a while. I missed him. I missed a villain being on here. I talked at length on Monday about how excited I am that the Pittsburgh Steelers have the right kind of villain back in Pittsburgh. Just feels like that Joey Porter, James Harrison, punch in the mouth. I don't care. It's me. I'm here. I'm him. Ike Taylor type of vibe. And that is Deshaun Elliott, my friend. He is back. He was all over the field against the Cleveland, all over the field against the Cleveland Browns. Shouldn't have given up a touchdown. That was clearly offensive pass interference, especially if you're going to call it on Mike Williams earlier in the game. Sorry, got to be fair. I mean, Deshaun Elliott's back. He might have quieted down for a little while, but he never disappeared. He never played bad. That was the best part about this, is there was never a time where you said Deshaun Elliott is struggling right now. It was Deshaun Elliott playing a little bit less than what Deshaun Elliott should be playing like, or was playing like originally. Nah, he's back. Last 2 games, Cincinnati, Cleveland. Dude's been a rock star. He's just hitting people, talking smack, dressing like the best dresser on the football team, if you ask anybody in the locker room, and coming up with some fantastic post-game press conferences. Shout out to Deshaun Elliott. Number 4 on this list, I believe a dip from last week, but I'm not 100%. Or we didn't do this last week, did we?
We did not.
Yeah, no power rankings last week. So I think a dip from 2 weeks ago. Number 4, the only offensive player on this list. And no, it's not George Pickens. It's the guy throwing on the football. It's the guy that's got the Pittsburgh Steelers believing they're a Super Bowl contender. It's got the entire NFL world thinking the Pittsburgh Steelers are a Super Bowl contender. It's a guy who people are starting to talk and say, maybe the Denver Broncos, maybe they were the issue. Maybe it was Denver and not Russell Wilson. Number 4 is Russ himself. He is cooking. I saw the best analogy, sentence, whatever you want to call it, the other day. It said, the AFC North kitchen is red hot and Russ is cooking. And I said, damn, that was a sentence. Russell Wilson remains the focal point of the offense, the reason they win, the reason they don't stumble longer than they need to, the reason that you believe in them from start to finish in these games. This is not old school Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to beat you in the 2-minute drive. This is, we're going to start slow, but we're going to pick it up way faster than we've ever picked it up before. Why? Because of Russell Wilson. Hands down, no questions asked, because of Russell Wilson. I mean, this dude has the whole world believing in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you got to give him credit where credit is due on that one. Number 3. I mean, I said this yesterday. I've said this for a week, I think. This is his Canton year. This is his put this guy in the Hall of Fame. Stop talking about it. Stop debating it. Stop ignoring it. I understand defensive tackles get much less love than the rest of the defensive line. I understand that defensive tackles, if you don't have a name like Dexter Lawrence and you're the only guy on the line like Christian Wilkins was in Miami, that you're a nobody. I get that. I get that TJ Watt overshadows each and every season. But if you asked me who in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room should be a candidate, a big one, for Defensive Player of the Year, I think there's an argument to be made for both TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. This is possibly his best season as a Pittsburgh Steeler, which is wild to say at 35. He is easily cementing himself in NFL history. He should already have that enshrinement ready to go, working on that Hall of Fame speech after hopefully a Super Bowl parade speech. I mean, Cam Hayward is he is the glue right now. He is the glue guy. He is the we keep it together because of me. I do what needs to be done in those big, crazy moments. We're starting to hit the point where people aren't even asking for it because they're still saying TJ Watt's got to do something here. And then Cam Hayward does something. That's where we're at with Cam. Number 3 is Cam. He is easily the 3rd best player on the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. And to be honest, if number 1 wasn't doing the things he was doing, he'd be number 2. Number 2. Wild to say this. With who is number 1. But number 2 is TJ Watt. TJ Watt remains TJ Watt. And I get it. I hear it all. But I saw a stat today that said TJ Watt was chipped, I believe, 32% of the time this season. Myles Garrett's below him at like 21%. So, Everybody talking at the end of the year, double team percentage, this and this and this and this and this and this. Go look at that stat, PFF. Go look at that stat. TJ Watt is putting on a show. He's doing crazy things. He needs to put more sacks up. He's not going to have some crazy sack numbers. I get it. But he's got to continue to just be TJ Watt, and that's what he's doing. He's being a guy that everybody has to focus on, and therefore Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, they're all eating Keanu Benton, eating because of it. And that's what matters right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to win a Super Bowl, not Defensive Player of the Year. And TJ Watt is certainly playing his role in that one. And number one, I've been yelled at week after week after week for not putting him in my power rankings. And you know what? I sat there and I watched Dustin Hopkins miss a field goal, and then he missed another one. And I said, yeah, it's time. It's time. Number one, long overdue, number one on this list, but easily the MVP of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. Money man himself, the definition of money, some would say, Chris Money Boswell, all the way up from not on the list all season long. He's on pace to break David Akers' record for the most field goals in a season by 3. I mean, we talked, can he get to 186 points? Why not? Why not? You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers ask him to score 18 points 1 or 2 more times. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. He's going to get close. Chris Boswell is the best kicker in football. I love that he's getting the recognition because it's deserved that he's getting this recognition. I love that they will finally acknowledge him as an all-pro and the best kicker in football this season because, once again, he deserves to be recognized as the best kicker in football this season. I mean, anybody out there who's preparing your Chris Boswell all-pro article that's going to go out as breaking news in a month or whatever, yeah, get it ready now because he's going to do it. Shout out Chris Boswell. He's easily number one. That's my list here. Deshaun Elliott, Russell Wilson, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, topping it off, the money man himself, Chris $Boswell. Your thoughts on this week's power rankings?
Yeah, this is the second time all season that TJ Watt's been bumped out of the number one spot. One time it was in favor of Deshaun Elliott, and now it's in favor of Chris Boswell. And I agree with this one more than I agree with the last one, simply because I don't think there's anybody on the defense that is a bigger factor right now than TJ Watt for the exact reason that you mentioned. He is putting food on the table, and all these other dogs are coming to eat, except for one, because I listened to Nick Herbig on the Christian Coons podcast, and he says, I don't eat before games because hungry dogs run faster, which made me love him even more. So you got
Conor McGregor,
a bunch of other dogs that are eating based on what TJ Watt is doing. And then you have Nick Herbig, who's a freak of nature in his own right. So I love the fact that he's up there. I love the fact that he's still atop the defense in the power rankings. And I love that this is a defense laden power rankings because that is the heart of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that there's some games, you know, go back to Cincinnati where they have to rely on the offense. They have to rely on Russell Wilson to throw 400 yards, but more often than not, especially on home field, it's the defense that's strawing the drink. And I think that's why they have 3 of these 5 spots. And then, of course, Chris Boswell's money. The fans have wanted it. The listeners have wanted it. And you gave it to him because not just that reason, but because he deserves it.
He definitely deserves it. I mean, Chris Boswell, man, long time coming. It's one of those things where it's everybody. It's every generation has one. And somehow this generation ended up with it being a kicker, where it's the Peyton Manning isn't the greatest quarterback of his generation because of Tom Brady. You know, Chris Boswell is not the greatest kicker of his generation because of Justin Tucker. Well, guess what, man? Justin Tucker fell off a full train at the beginning of the season, and Chris Boswell said, I'm here, pal. I ain't going nowhere anytime fast. So shout out to our boy, Chris Boswell. I'm curious to see how you guys feel about the money man being number one. With that said, it's time to dive into all of your questions as we do every single day. So make sure that you're tossing them in the chat. But first, we got a quick word from our boys over at Rocket Money. The start of the new year is the perfect time to get organized, set goals, and prioritize what matters most. For me, a top priority is my financial wellness, which feels more important than ever. Thanks to Rocket Money, my goals feel achievable, and they show me all of my subscriptions right in one place and help me easily cancel the ones I forgot I've been paying for. Rocket Money also pulls together all of my spending across all of my different accounts so I can clearly track my spending habits and see where I can cut back. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. For ones you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. Easily create a personalized budget with custom categories to keep your spending on track. See your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money is going. Get alerts if your bills increase in price, there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. The new goals feature automatically saves money for you, so you don't have to think about it. Pay off credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just building your savings. Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service so you don't have to. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/allsteelers today. That's rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. Shout out our boys over at Rocket Money. Nick, I'm excited for this one. We talked Cole Holcomb's potential return. Biggest news of the season. George Pickens updates. Chris Boswell making the top. It's a good day. It's a good Wednesday, my friend. It's a good Wednesday. With that, we'll top it off the way we do every day. We're going to answer all your questions, so make sure that you're tossing them in the chat. Nick, what do we got?
Yeah, let's kick off with Knox, who says Russell Wilson is 5-0 against the Eagles in his career. Does that higher our chances of winning? 5-0 in the regular season, mind you. He's also 1-0 in the playoffs.
Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I don't know how to take that. Different team, different atmosphere. The Steelers haven't won in Philadelphia in 60 years. I mean, what do you take into account more? The quarterback without his top wide receiver, or history saying the Pittsburgh Steelers just do not win in Philadelphia? I'm not saying that means the Steelers are going to lose. I'm not saying that means that it's null and void, the Russ thing. I'm just saying simply, I don't know. I don't know how to take that. I would say it's a good stat to have on your side, but I don't know if it makes a difference in this one.
Yeah, can 6-0 outweigh, what is it, 40-some years, 50-some years?
59 years. 59 years of losses.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Let's go over to John, who says, what are the odds Arthur Smith goes pass heavy against the Eagles? Without GP, they might be expecting us to come out running a lot.
Yeah, I could see a good variety of passing. However, it is supposed to be real nasty out there. It's supposed to be like 25 degrees, raining all day. It's not going to be a good spot. I just have a hard time thinking that the weather is going to let you be a pass-heavy team in this one. So I could see Arthur Smith saying, we're going to take shots. We're going to open this up. Arthur Smith is smart enough. I mean, credit where credit's due. This man has been hit with massive injury news a day or an hour before a game twice this season at his two biggest positions and has overcome both of them with wins. That's very impressive. I think he's going to come out here and definitely be not predictable. He will be unpredictable when it comes to the offense. I could see some pass heavy moments. I think the weather is going to play a role, though.
Let's jump over to Josh, who says, will TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Patrick Queen all finish their careers in Pittsburgh?
Oh, this is tough. So you got to look at it like TJ's up for a contract after 2025. Okay. Then you got Herbig, who you'd probably re-sign. But if you re-sign him, can you afford Alex Highsmith again? I don't know. Would you take Nick Herbig over Alex Highsmith? I don't know. Patrick Queen, I think, is an easier one here. But is he going to want a massive deal in 3 years? I don't know. I think there are a lot of questions for guys. TJ is a guarantee The other three, I think, are very much so open for we'll see what happens over the next, X amount of years with how much they cost compared to what the Pittsburgh Steelers are willing to pay.
Let's go over to Shower Curtain, who says, do you think at some point Coach T starts to play the bracket to set up a strategic playoff run?
Like, as in he starts to play? Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe a little bit, but I think it's too unpredictable everywhere. Like, you play the bracket, I get it, but things could change. Like, it's too early. So maybe in week 18, that's your move to say, okay, we're okay with this, or we have to win so we could get this. But I think right now, no. I think next week, no. And I think by the time you get to Kansas City, it's all trains, all focus on Kansas City.
Bless you.
Excuse me. So you can't be focusing on the playoffs too much.
Let's jump over to Carl Spackler, who says, would you rather have home field in the AFC Championship against KC, or would you rather go on the road against the Buffalo Bills?
Home field against KC. Easy. I don't want to go to Buffalo. Buffalo sucks. Personally, I don't want to go to Buffalo. Buffalo sucks. AFC Championship at Acrisure. Imagine how bumping that stadium is. Imagine. It's crazy. You have a silent count for Patrick Mahomes, so you screw that completely up. You just take away weapons. It's a completely different environment. I would 100% take home field advantage over Kansas City than having to go to Buffalo and play the Bills, who are just as dangerous as Kansas City,
if not more. And I think that's why I think on both accounts, I would take the former rather than the latter in this one.
Yes. Agreed.
Let's go back to Josh, who says T. Higgins would be a great moonball guy for Russell Wilson. What other receivers, though, could we land in free agency or via trade with George Pickens as part of the package?
I mean,
is there
George
any
Pickens
receiver?
Yeah, no, you're not. I mean, no, like Jamar Chase would be it. I don't even know another superstar wide receiver who would be on the market that you could possibly make like you trading for Justin Jefferson the year after he signs a massive deal. Probably not. So I would say no. T. Higgins is the name to watch for sure. I could see Deebo Samuel getting cut and him being a name to watch. The Steelers had some interest in him over the offseason. I can see Terry McLaurin is a name that does not have a contract extension right now. I believe he's about to enter his final year. He could be a name to watch. I'm not saying you trade George Pickens for him, but maybe you make a move for him. I'm sure there will be others, but those would be three names for sure: Higgins, Deebo Samuel, and Terry McLaurin. That
McLaurin has one more year.
Yeah, after this one, so I could see him getting traded this offseason. Those three names I would keep an eye on.
All right, let's go over to Chris, who says, where's the Darnell Washington red zone packages? Nothing since Fields threw him that touchdown in week 2.
They're just not there. I don't know. I agree with you. I think you could use them. I think they would be very effective. I mean, it was nice when he caught that one. I don't know why he's not playing. It seems like his usage is going down. I'm not totally sure why. Michael Pruitt's obviously healthy now, so they're playing him. I'm not totally sure why, but they seem to have a fascination with these guys. I would line up Darnell Washington way more than he's being utilized and make him a threat for this offense. I don't think that they agree with me. I'm not saying they should, but that's my thought on this. I would use Darnell much more, especially with Pickens out. That's a big body in the red zone.
He scored the first touchdown of the year for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the regular season. What are the odds that he only scores the first and last touchdowns of the year for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I mean, he's halfway there, so I'm not going to say it's impossible.
If the Steelers are locked into their position, I don't know, maybe Pat Freiermuth takes the day off, and maybe it's Darnell Washington's show against Cincinnati in Week 18.
That would be so awesome. That would be so just Justin Fields and Darnell just lighting up the field. I would love it. Would love it.
Let's go over to Zach B, who says, is Joey Porter Jr. a worry with all the holding calls?
I mean, he wasn't last week against the Browns, and I think that's the biggest thing here is he's a dude who takes accountability, has great mentors, has great veterans around him in the locker room. So if he says something, if his mindset's right, and it seemed to be, he was very accountable of, hey, I understand that I don't agree with these calls, but they're happening, so I got to fix them. And it seemed that he went out there and he fixed them. So I would imagine there are some hiccups, obviously, but he seems to have his head on his head on his shoulders well and pointed in the right direction. And it feels like he understands he has to fix this, and he's working to do so.
Let's go over to Jack the Goat, who says, do you think we will work Fields in more towards the end of the season?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think you will use him when you need to, but I don't think it'll be you have to use him. It'll work better in the playoffs. Like at this point, the Steelers are in figure out the playoffs, earn your playoff spot first, win the AFC North next, and then figure out your playoff spot. And you're very close to the point of you're kind of preparing for the postseason. So if that's the case, hold some bullets and kind of confuse some guys so that when Justin does go out there in the postseason, it's not like every single week we use Justin more and more and more.
Let's go over to Aiden, who says, what's up, guys? After watching the Cleveland game, all I was able to think about was George Pickens didn't play and made himself more money due to the lethargic passing game. What do you guys think?
No, I don't think that. I think George is getting paid no matter what. It does not matter about his on the field actions. He could do anything he wants. He is a top wide receiver. It's the character stuff. It's the attitude stuff. It's the maturity stuff. And I hate to bring this up when he's already down. I don't want to kick somebody while they're down. So I'm gonna keep it simple and short here, but that's what it comes down to. George's next contract is determined on how much of a risk is he compared to how good he plays on the field. That's what's going to determine how much money's in his pocket 2 years from now.
Let's go to MF Tide, who says, do you think we get a free agent wide receiver or draft Emeka Ibuka in the first round?
I think both is a possibility. If you could solve your quarterback issue, which I expect them to do with Russ, then I think the Steelers are going to approach a wide receiver in free agency. I believe they're going to make a splash in free agency to say, hey, we need another no questions asked top guy. T. Higgins would be my top choice. Christian Kirk could be another one. Those types of players. But I could also see them going to the NFL draft and saying, screw it, let's just load up and let's just go all in. I could see both of those things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a likely possibility that the Steelers get a free agent and still consider a wide receiver early in the draft.
As of right now, and I'll just add on to this one, as of right now, which receivers on the Steelers roster do you think already have a spot on the 2025 roster? Is it as simple as Pickens, Austin, and Roman Wilson, and that's it?
Ben Skoranek, pal.
And and Ben
Skoranek, pal. But yes, I would think those are the only four guys. I would think George Pickens, Ben Skoranek, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson are the only four wide receivers the Steelers bring back.
All righty, let's go over to Carl, who says, what's the chances the Eagles put Kenny Pickett in for a tush push, and then as a response, Mike Tomlin puts in Russ and Fields on the same play to retaliate?
On the same play. Are we thinking same play as in their own tush push here?
No, I'm thinking same play as in like Bo.
They're playing defense.
Drew Aller.
Yeah.
No, not in. Yeah. Oh wait, yeah, no, not in against the tush push, but like Drew Aller, Bo Perbula. Like, why are there two quarterbacks on the field?
Gotcha. I would say probably not. Would love to see some Kenny Pickett in this game, though. Would love to. I think everybody would love to see some Kenny Pickett in this game.
Let's go over to Harlem Trent, who says, for the uninitiated, what injury did Cole Holcomb had all those months ago that's kept him out this long?
Okay, so it was believed to be an ACL tear. Then it was turned into an ACL and other ligament damage, I believe. And now it's just known as like more significant than an ACL. That was the final diagnosis that was reported everywhere. So for those of you who are listening to this on audio, quotation marks, air quotes, more serious, more significant than an ACL. That is what I and everybody else have been told and reported by.
Speaking of the linebackers, DKB17 wants to know, what are the odds they keep all four after this season?
I'm pretty good. Elandon Roberts ain't going nowhere. You're crazy if you let him go. Patrick Queen is still under contract. Peyton Wilson's a rookie. And Cole Holcomb's got another year on his deal. So you're not keeping Cole Holcomb around all season long saying, hey, dude, we're going to pay you on PUP. so that a year from now, we're just going to let you go. Like, no. I could see if Cole doesn't have a spot on the defense and you have to make a tough decision there, but I think the Steelers would be more than happy to have a 4-man rotation at inside linebacker and say, yeah, that's okay. We're very much so okay here, especially after the past couple of years. So I think it's pretty good chance, actually, all 4 of them are on the roster next season.
Did you happen to see, since we're already talking about this, Landon Roberts on the fan say he wants to retire a Steeler?
Yeah, he should. He should retire a Steeler. He is a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler that got drafted by the Patriots, ended up in Miami, and then played. Nope, that was it. Just those 2 places, and then ended up in Pittsburgh. Like he waited a little bit, but there's a reason that him and Mike Tomlin vividly remember the conversation in the parking lot at Houston's Pro Day. They vividly remember it because he should have been a Pittsburgh Steeler from the jump.
Now let's go over to Chris, who says, how confident are you guys in the Steelers wide receivers without George Pickens against rookies Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean?
I'm not super confident. I can't sit here and say that I think it's going to be just, they'll win the war. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. Mm-hmm. But I still think it's the right move to sit him and be cautious. I mean, I could care less about Philadelphia. And the Pittsburgh Steelers want to win, but their season outcome doesn't really get determined by Philadelphia. If they win the AFC North, chances are they're still the 3 seed. That's a good place to be. They obviously want to be the 2, maybe the 1 seed, but that's a long way to go here. There's a long way to go here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if Kansas City loses this weekend and the Steelers beat Philly, it's a whole other ballgame. You are now hunting for that 1 seed. But unless that happens, the Steelers are in a weird spot where, right now it's preparing for the playoffs while still being in the playoff hunt, and being safe with George Pickens is the right move. I think Calvin Austin could have the best day of all the wide receivers because I think he'll play inside, and I think he's got the speed to beat Cooper DeJean, who that kills me to say, but he does.
I know that was one of your guys in the draft process last year.
Was the guy.
Let's go to Zach B, who wants another injury update. Says, anything on Mont Adams?
He was a full participant today. He was a full participant most of last week, finished limited, I believe, and then was ruled out. I think the Steelers are going to try to get him back. They still have a full other week after this one to get him back on that roster. So I anticipate at some point he does come back. It'll be a slow roll, though, because, you're not going to just rush into things. You're going to make sure he's 100%, especially with the knee injury. So he was a full participant today. I think it's coming. I don't know when.
Let's go over to Michael, who says, which wide receiver do you think Joey Porter Jr. ends up covering this weekend?
Oh, I mean, number 11, A.J. Brown. All day long. That is what will happen because it's the perfect matchup. This is not Jamar Chase. This is not who else is a super speedy wide receiver. I don't know. This is big-bodied, mano-a-mano, physical wide receiver, physical cornerback. Who's going to win? And the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to feel very confident that their guy has the upper hand. So it's going to be A.J. Brown. That is the most exciting matchup of the entire day because it'll be raining. Josh Allen. Jalen Hurts is already getting baggage from his wide receiver because he can't throw the football. We'll see what happens there. Joey Porter Jr. is going to be ready for a brawl, and it's going to be a good one. So it'll be A.J. Brown.
Let's go over to DKB17 again, who says, what would he have to see from Russ in order to move on from him and re-sign Fields long-term? So how bad would Russ have to be for them to shift gears?
It'd be really bad. It'd have to be real bad for the rest of the season. Like it would be an utter disaster, a complete downfall. Things are over. And then you'd have to get Justin back in there. So it's not going to happen. I would say at this point, it's as good as I thought Cole Holcomb's return was yesterday. That's my percentage of Russ being gone, which is not 0, but very close to 0. Although I was shocked today, so you never know. But I would say Russ would have to be, it would have to get really, really bad, really, really fast for Russ to be on the outs and Justin Fields to be the guy they sign long-term next season.
Let's close this out with Marlon Lewis, who says, almost missed today. Didn't. Got in under the gun. Says, if our offense struggles again, I wouldn't say again. If our offense struggles, does it say more about George Pickens or about the rest of the wide receiver room?
Oh, I would say it says more about Philadelphia. I would say that. Like it would say more about Philadelphia because Philadelphia's defense is really good. And the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core, like, what are the expectations without George? And that they're not good, right? That's what the expectations are, that without George Pickens, the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core is just not good. So we already know that. That's already being said. If they struggle completely, I mean, I think it says more about Najee Harris and the offensive line and the running game and how they can't handle the workload if you need to put it on them without George out there. I think that's what it says. I think we know what George is. I think we know how good George is and the role that George plays and also what everybody else can do. I think it's a bigger statement for everybody else on that offense. But I think at the same time, if they play well, it's a massive statement about how we all underestimated the wide receiver core, even though I think that's a much less likely outcome in this one.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy a rainy, a snowy, but a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.